Hello there, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of the Jesse Ray podcast. Hope you guys have been enjoying it so far, and just wanted to remind everybody to please subscribe and rate and leave any comments you want. And also do me a favor and check out my Twitter feed and my Instagram feeds. They are both at Jesse Ray Podcast without the at the beginning. Just Jesse Ray Podcast. And today's episode is going to be a little bit different. But before I get into what I'm going to be talking about, I wanted to, off the bat, to let everybody know that I'm doing a giveaway. I am going to be giving a signed copy of a hardcover, oversized, full cover reprint of EC Comics Weird Fantasy Volume 1. And you can get an idea of what it looks like on the Instagram page. And if anybody's interested in getting a copy of it, just send an email to my email for the podcast, which is jesseraypodcast@gmail.com. Again, without the just jesseraypodcast@gmail.com with the subject giveaway. And if you send that, you will be randomly entered and someone will randomly get it. You can also tweet Jesse Ray, hashtag Jesse Ray giveaway if you want to do it that way. So yeah, that would be awesome, and it's a really cool book. I think whoever gets it will really enjoy it, and also, yeah, just a good way to enter is to follow me on Twitter too, because the more followers I get, the better, and you can just tweet about the giveaway then. Anyway, enough about that. So, I have been thinking that this is something I'm pretty good at and enjoy doing, and a lot of my friends and people out there that are enjoying it may be asking themselves, how come I didn't do it sooner? And why take me so long to get going? Well, honestly, it's something I've been thinking about doing for about 6 or 7 years, but honestly, one of the main things that's been distracting me over the last 10 years, 12 years, has been relationships with women. And I've talked somewhat about, what it's like being disabled and how people tend to ignore the idea of you having a sexuality or just don't even think about it. So I thought that it might be a cool idea for episode 3 to talk about kind of my history with relationships and women more in depth, and especially the two big relationships in the last decade that have definitely distracted me. And I'll get more into why that is a little more down the line. But I think I mentioned, starting at the beginning here, that in my other podcast, that I got interested in girls and the idea of, hanging out with them and being attracted to them at a pretty young age. Like, I started thinking about them around 8 or 9, and the first girl that I ever really liked was a girl named Emily that lived down the street from me. She went to the same elementary school that I went to. And we used to walk to school together because she used to walk right by my house. So when she would get here, I'd join her and walk to school with her. And we became fairly good friends, and she was really cool. And I believe when I was in fourth grade, I asked her if she would quote unquote go with me, because that's what you said back when I was going to elementary school in the early 80s. And I don't even know exactly what that meant, but I think it meant that she was supposed to be my girlfriend, and we would probably hold hands and kiss or something. But, so that was, of course, like 9, 10 years old. It took a lot of guts to get up the courage to ask her, and I was, of course, the only kid at my elementary school in an electric wheelchair. That was fairly different. I wasn't on the ventilator by that point, but I was in the chair. I was very skinny at that point too, because that was a few years before I got on the ventilator, and I basically doubled my weight. But anyway, so I got up the courage, asked her, and I should have known it was a bad sign, because the first thing she said was, "Let me think about it." And she kind of like avoided me for a day or two after that. And when I finally pinned her down and was like, "Hey, what's going on here?" she said, "Well, I'm worried that if I go out with you, everybody's gonna laugh at me." And as you can imagine, that was kind of a big blow, and definitely bummed me out pretty majorly, and it kind of dashed my hopes for asking out girls for some time after that. I think there was a girl in junior high that told someone she liked me, but I think I was so like petrified about going there by that point, but I was just kind of like over it. But, all of this didn't lower my interest in girls per se, and especially by the time I got into high school, I really was interested in girls and wanted a girlfriend. But I tended to be the shy, nice boy, and I would be most girls that I got along with. I would end up being their best friend and be the guy that they would talk to about the guys that they liked or whatnot. And so that was kind of the pattern for a while. Fitted that, though, now I've realized that there were actually a few girls in high school that were pretty interested in me. In fact, one of them was a cheerleader, I think, when I was a senior or a junior, and I think she was a sophomore. Can't remember her name, but maybe if she's listening, she'll remember. But she liked me, I think, and I was just way too shy to kind of do anything about it, I guess. So I just have enough confidence to really say what I wanted or what I was feeling or whatnot. But there was a girl, actually two girls, that I became really good friends with. Satara Lazati and Giselle. I can't remember her last name offhand. Sorry, Giselle. But they were really cool girls, and they were good friends for a while. At least when I first met them. And then me and Satara ended up staying friends pretty much throughout high school. And she was a really interesting girl because her parents were Afghani, and they were like first generation Afghani. And so she was born in America and grew up here, but her parents were very conservative, and it was just really interesting because she was like really interested in a lot of the alternative rock bands that I was into, like Jane's Addiction and Bauhaus, and I think we actually went to see Jane's Addiction together. Maybe at Lollapalooza, I can't remember. But it was awesome, and it was just cool to see kind of the way her parents reacted to her kind of trying to become sort of a rebellious American teenage girl. Um, but, they talked about like her having an arranged marriage and all that kind of stuff, but that never ended up happening, and they ended up getting more and more tolerant of her. And I think partly that was because of me, because I was made to tell I was a nice kid, and even though I was into weird rock and roll and had kind of an interesting influence on their daughter, I think they liked me, and I would go to dinner at their house sometimes, and they would make traditional Afghani meals, and it was really cool. And but besides being really good friends, I had a crush on her, partly just because she was one of my best friends, and I kind of didn't really get the whole separation of friends and lovers idea back then. Kind of took me some time to grasp that one. And I know that she was the first girl I ever made out with, because when I was a senior, I think I said to her, like, I never really made out with anybody, and you're my friend, so let's make out. What do you say? And she was actually really cool about it and dove right in and gave me a nice make-out session, and it was really cool. And it was just a good confidence booster, because even at 18, I had not had a lot of experience. And then I got to college, and the thing about college, I went to UCSC obviously, is as I was growing up as a teenager, and I would talk to my parents and my caregivers about how, like, it was hard for me to get a girlfriend, and how I wondered if I was ever going to. Everybody would just tell me over and over again, wait till you get to college. Everything will be better then. And people will be a lot more open-minded and tolerant and etc. And my experience at college was not really that way at all. But I think, as I mentioned in my other podcast, a lot of that was mainly just because I was stoned all the time, smoking a lot of pot, and extremely shy and withdrawn. And just, I don't know, I guess I expected girls to just like be super excited about me and interested in me and start hitting on me or something, which in hindsight is kind of silly. But that was sort of where my head was at the time. And, also, like I said, I kind of had a habit of becoming those best friends. And so, kind of like, after I graduated college, for the next 5 or 6 years, I would say, from like 25 to 32, that was when I kind of just got, well, no, before I get in there, I was about to talk about seeing escorts, because that was something I wanted to do for about 6 years now. But before that happened, or maybe like simultaneously around the same time, in a way, the first relationship that I had was actually with one of my nurses. And we never, like, came out in public and told people that we were boyfriend, girlfriend, because it was looked down on, especially if you were like a nurse, and that's not as much the case these days, but she wasn't comfortable really telling anybody about the way we interacted because, well, professional reasons, like I said, but it was just kind of something we kept between us. And even though we didn't like to have sex per se, we fooled around a bit, but it was more like an emotional, like, girlfriend boyfriend type relationship. She was kind of going through a breakup at the time and was single for a few years. And I kind of became a big emotional support for her as a boyfriend would, and she would fool around with me a little bit. So it was like kind of my first relationship, and I always thought of it that way, and I always told her that I consider her my first girlfriend. And I'm not gonna say her name for, because she's still a nurse, but she knows who she is, so. And I'm sure she's listening, so there you go. I will just say to her right here that, it was really nice to have that experience at that time in my life, especially when I had just gotten out of college and was feeling kind of like, am I ever gonna get a girlfriend? And it was just kind of nice to have that sort of domestic kind of hangout with somebody. And, but yeah, as I mentioned a little bit ago, I also started seeing escorts around this time. Basically, I got to the point where I was just like, fuck it, I don't want to wait to have sex anymore, and I'm probably gonna get a girlfriend one of these days, but until that happens, why not? And I made a point to spend my money on higher class escorts, better looking, obviously. They tended to be girls that were going to college and just trying to make extra money, or they had day jobs and they had a professional job as well, but they just made extra money this way. And I made a point to find girls that did what was called girlfriend experience, and that basically meant that if you paid for them, and they would be a little bit more expensive, but they tended to charge around $300 to $400 an hour, which, for a really pretty nice girl isn't that bad, actually, I didn't think at the time. And it wasn't something that I did, like, all the time, because I couldn't afford it all the time, but it was like an every few months kind of thing. But the little thing experience then meant that they would make out with you, which a lot of escorts wouldn't, and they would tend to give blowjobs without condoms, and more than anything, they would just be down to like talk to you and cuddle with you and talk to you as if you were their boyfriend for an hour. And honestly, at that point in my life, I was looking for sex to a degree, but I would say even more, I was just looking for physical contact and affection and as much love as I could get from a situation like that. And so that's why I would tend to see those girls, and I wouldn't find the girls that I liked that wanted to kind of have an ongoing thing, and that way I could see them over and over and get to know them a little better than just like a streetwalker or something. Not that I would be down for that anyway, but you get the idea. And it was kind of cool. And I actually wrote a short film based on some of those experiences with those girls, and it was called As Close as You Could Get, or no, it was called As Close as Possible. That's right. Because that was the idea behind it was, you know, I can't give a girlfriend, but it's as close as I can possibly get to something along those lines. But it was an interesting part of my life, and I think it's good to mention also because not only did it give me some experiences and comfort and affection that I sorely needed at the time. But I also think it's good to talk about it because I think that escorts and tall girls, whatever you want to call them in general, just don't get as much respect as they deserve, and I think that they provide a important service in life to certain people. And granted, you know, I would say 90% of the time they're probably just seeing husbands that are cheating on their wives. Unfortunately, I would hear that a lot, that that's what mostly would be what they would be doing, and they were usually rather glad to see me because I was different than that. But, you know, who knows how much they were just telling me what I wanted to hear. But still, but you know, even beyond that, I'm sure I'm not the only disabled person that used that service, and also just in certain situations, I'm sure it can be a good thing. And I think that it's unfortunate that it's illegal because more than anything else, that just makes them way less protected from sketchy guys and doesn't give them a way to have, you know, cops on their side protecting them, and I think they should, and I think it should definitely be legal, just like most drugs probably should be legal. I mean, as long as alcohol's gonna be legal, and pretty much all drugs should be, because alcohol's probably just as bad, if not worse, than heroin, and maybe it's not quite as bad as meth, but they're all pretty bad, in my opinion. But anyway, yeah, getting back to escorts, I also always found it very odd that if you decide to film yourself getting paid to have sex, then suddenly it's not illegal anymore. If you're filming yourself getting paid to have sex, then you're an adult actor or actress, and I just find that funny that doing that somehow makes it legal. It's just always been odd to me, but whatever. um, the whole porn industry definitely has its place as well, and I will get back to that in a little bit. But anyway, after I have been doing that for some time, I just sort of started thinking, like, okay, I know that I'm doing something wrong here. Like, I'm, like, yes, people in general are really prejudiced about disabled people when it comes to relationships and sex, and most girls don't even know that I'm probably even available, let alone that I'm interested in them. And again, I was still pretty shy at this point from all my bad experiences. So I kind of decided that I was gonna start looking into quote unquote the whole, the books about how to get women and how to pick up girls and all that kind of stuff. And there was actually kind of a segment on the internet, again, news groups actually, where guys would talk about like techniques for picking up girls. And there was even around this period of time, I think there was just kind of a boom in that industry because a bunch of books came out that weren't just like dumb, sleazy books that you would buy at like a porn shop or something. These were books that you would get at like Boners Books or whatever. And there was this guy, Mystery, who actually even had a VH1 reality show at the time called The Pickup Artist, and I think she would basically get shy, nerdy guys and teach them how to pick up girls and then send them into bars and like film what would happen. And I found that kind of amusing because I was reading a lot of stuff on the subject at the time. And, the thing you gotta keep in mind is a lot of these guys, the whole kind of shtick to, like, get you interested is the guys that wrote the books would have seminars and stuff so that you would spend more and more money on the subject, and they would often get into kind of sketchy ideas, if you will, like neuro-linguistic programming, like talking about sex without talking about it, and then the whole idea of nagging girls, which is basically like talking down to them and giving them shit to get them attracted to you, because a lot of girls are attracted to assholes is kind of the idea. But even though a lot of those like seminars and books would go in that direction, they would also just talk about like basic kind of evolution ideas about, how we're kind of still, whether we know it or not, programmed to some degree by our instincts that we haven't entirely evolved out of, and the idea that men are hunter-gatherers and providers, and women need to be provided for to some degree, and you can take that either as, they need money, or they need protection, or they just want to be taken care of, or they want to feel a certain way when you talk to them. And so there are ways that you can use these ideas in a method of just picking up as many girls as you possibly could for as many one-night stands as possible, which I think most of the guys that were into this stuff, that's what they were looking for. I was just kind of looking for some new ideas, and then being the best friend of a lot of girls, I realized that maybe I shouldn't just be their best friends right off the bat. And I started to realize that in some ways, I think the reason that I tended to become girls' best friends so quickly was because I was kind of conditioned by my mom to put women's feelings first and to take care of them kind of before my own needs to a degree, because my mom, even though she was an amazing, amazing mom and did so many great things for me, the only thing that she didn't really shine and could have done better at was there was a lot of times when she was separated from my dad and she was really depressed, and she would cry a lot around me and talk to me about like all the problems my dad had and all the things he did wrong and how much it upset her and why wouldn't he treat her better and all that, and having to kind of go against my dad and side with her and hear her whole kind of sob story was not enough, but I also kind of had to be like an emotional clutch in a way. Like, she never ever would do anything inappropriate with me, but like emotionally it was kind of inappropriate. And so I had to kind of just be the shoulder for her to cry on, and I think that kind of conditioned me to always kind of put every woman or girl that I met, I was more concerned about how they felt than what my feelings were for them or whatever. So there was that, and I also just sort of figured that I could take some of these pickup artist ideas and just kind of like get them more of a middle ground. Like, I didn't want to be a fucking jerk that just like gave women shit and treated them like shit so that they would treat me, but I also didn't want to just be a shoulder for them to talk to and try on. So it was kind of like finding the middle ground in there. And so as I was trying to gather in this information and getting some ideas, and a lot of it was just encouragement to be more confident too, and just kind of like show interest but not too much interest, that kind of thing, which actually makes sense. So I ended up finding out that the guy that did the VH1 show, that mystery guy, his real name is Eric, by the way, Eric Von Berkovich, I believe. He was doing a seminar in San Jose at a hotel. So I decided to go to a day of it, and it was actually pretty helpful and cool. They actually had some girls working for him that you could practice talking to and like pretending to pick up in a bar, or just try to be like confident and interested too when you talk to them. And it was good and helpful, and what ended up being the most helpful thing of all was I kind of went to talk to him at the end of the day, and he ended up sitting down with me for a good 15 20 minutes, and I kind of told him about my wife and my experiences with women and my non-experiences with women, and he really just said to me straight up, like, dude, you are a really interesting guy, and you have a lot of confidence, and, like, if you really own your sexuality and own your confidence and, like, use that, you could get girls. Like, it would not be that hard for you. And he was like, you could probably even be a porn star, like, if you wanted to like, go that route, because you're obviously really interested and open-minded, and, like, you should figure out a way to do that, basically. And it was really cool, and it made me feel more confident hearing that from a guy who, at least from the outside, looked like he was giving a lot of girls and knew what he was talking about. So it gave me confidence and definitely changed the way I kind of started talking to girls, especially when I first met them. I would treat them kind of more as just, I don't know, almost like if I liked a girl, I would just sort of say, to let her know that I thought she was interested, but not show her too much interest, and kind of tease her a little bit, like a little sister maybe, but you know, within reason. And it was funny, I also started kind of visualizing the type of girl that I wanted to meet. Because I kind of realized that I had a type, and it tended to be brunette, petite, cute, pitchy type girls. So I sort of put that out into the universe, that that was the kind of girl I wanted to meet. And oddly enough, a few months later, after going to the seminar and putting that thought out into the universe, I ended up meeting the girl woman that would become my first real relationship, and her name was Veronica King. And I met her because she was a roommate of my buddy Lee, who was the drummer for Stratosphere. And he was roommates with her and her boyfriend at the time, this guy Joel, who was a bass player in a couple of the local metal bands here in Santa Cruz. And they both were interested in working for me as a caregiver. So I met both of them, and they both started working for me. And right off the bat, I realized that I had a real interest in Veronica. She was like exactly my type physically, like I said, brunette, petite, totally hot. She was like an amateur model, actually, and could totally pull it off. And her relationship with Joel was kind of falling apart, at least that's what she was telling me. And she was, I don't know, she was just interested in me. So she was telling me that, you know, things were worse between them than they really were, but she made it sound like he was pretty terrible to her, and she broke up with him within like a month of meeting me, or a month or two, something like that. And which of course was totally awkward, because Joel was working for me and she was working for me, And so when she broke up with Joel, I basically fired him. So I turned to hang out with her more, and I basically was thinking that if I didn't jump on her, someone else would probably scoop her up, and I still think to this day that is probably true. So I don't really feel that bad about that end of it. But I'll get back to why I felt bad later about how things went between me and Joel. As shitty as it was for me to fire him, I felt even worse about it later. But I ended up dating Veronica for 6 years, which is a long time, especially for your first serious relationship. And we fell in love pretty hard. At least that was what I thought was going on. Later on, it was a little hard to tell. I do think that she fell in love with me, though, because you can't really think that entirely. And she was really into me and would do super nice things for me all the time. I did a lot of romantic things for her too. One of the very first things I did to like show her how much I liked her was I had one of my best buddies learn like 6 songs on acoustic guitar, and I serenaded her like 6 love songs by bands that I liked, and I think that went pretty far and went into rumor. And I would write her cards all the time, and she would write me really sweet cards all the time, and we, met each other's parents. I never met her dad, but I met her mom. I met her dad later, actually, towards the end, but I met her mom kind of early on. And I met some of her friends, and we got close really quickly, and we fell in love hard, and after a few years we were talking about possibly even getting married at some point. We talked even about having kids. I ended up taking her to Hawaii 3 times. I'm sure that was not so bad for her. I know it was fun as hell for me. I was really lucky to get to go there as many times as I did. I actually got some financial assistance from some in-laws for a few years, so that enabled me to go there once a year and take Veronica for a few years there. And, but it was not all great. And from the get-go, one of the main issues that we had was she was emotionally kind of all over the place, and it was hard to tell if she was manic depressive or like borderline personality. That was when it started to seem like more later on. I figured she was just depressed mainly because she told me that she had some serious sexual abuse issues as a kid, like really bad stuff, basically like getting pimped out by a member of her family for drugs for like years, and that became basically kind of the main reason that she would use when she would get really hysterical or depressed or almost suicidal, and I would have to talk her down. And she also used it as a reason for being uncomfortable with sex a lot of the time, even though she wanted to be affectionate with me and we made out a lot of the time. she would give me a fair amount of blowjobs. I got to give her credit for that. But sex life was always kind of weird and uncomfortable, and she would say that that was why, because of those issues. And of course, you're in love with someone, you want to trust them, you want to believe what they're telling you. It's hard to believe that someone would make up something like that. So of course I believed her, and why wouldn't I? But as we got towards the end of our 6 years together, I started noticing more and more just kind of weird things happening. Basically, she would disappear for periods of time. She started acting more and more erratic. Um, she had gone to Stanford for a couple years before I met her, and never graduated, but went there a couple years. And because of that, she was pre-med when she went there. She told me that she wanted to volunteer at the ER at Stanford Hospital with a doctor that worked in the ER there. And she started going up to do that every other weekend or so. And I started lending her my van to do that because that sounded like a cool thing for her to do. Um, Unfortunately, she ended up trashing my van towards the end of our relationship on the way back from doing this, and as I said, she was acting weirder and weirder, and I ended up, see, one thing that you realize if you're disabled and you're dating a girl is that if they want to, they can hide shit from you quite easily, and I kind of started to realize that maybe that could be the case. And when she started acting weirder and weirder, particularly more and more hyper and kind of speedy, if you will, I ended up having one of my caregivers look in her purse, and I found a giant bag of meth. And this was after she had also been telling me that she was going to a therapist that my mom had introduced her to work on her issues and all that. And after I found the drugs and I could tell how kind of out there she was and crazy she was getting, I basically told his dad what was going on, and we broke up, and I soon found out that, well, her family told me that none of the abuse stuff ever happened, that she was never sexually abused, and basically that she was making all this up and might be borderline crazy. And I still don't know to this day if that's the case or if her family was just in total denial about it, but she did end up lying to me about a lot of things. It turned out that she was never going to the ER at Stanford, that she was actually seeing another guy. So she had this whole other life, at least for the last year or so that we were dating. And I still, to this day, don't even know what was real and what wasn't. I have tried to talk to her about this stuff and reconcile and kind of try to have some closure about it all. But she has yet to be able to do that with me. So, who knows? Maybe I'll find out. But I do kind of feel bad about blowing Joe off so badly at the beginning, because he actually tried to be friends with me again later on down the line. I think he tried to friend me on Facebook, but Veronica had given me this narrative of him being an abusive asshole, which I believed, and now I'm thinking that that probably wasn't the case, and that probably both of us were fucked over and lied to by her quite a bit. So, however, before I close the chapter on Veronica, I do want to say that she did love me a lot, and that was obvious. And even if she did have mental problems, that made it difficult for her to really be a real girlfriend. She was very close to me and some of my friends, and my mom in particular she got very close to and almost kind of became a daughter to. And my mom ended up getting, kind of bummed when she ended up leaving our lives as well. Not as much as me, obviously, but she was just a big part of my life. I had taken her to my family's house for holidays, and yeah, she was one of the loves of my life, for sure. And even though there was obviously a lot of weird shit at the end, there was a lot of good. And one thing that was kind of interesting was about a year before we broke up, I and her talked about getting a dog together. And I spent a lot of time researching the different breeds, and I was looking for kind of a breed that would be like maybe a slightly smaller, not a huge dog. Definitely the type of dog that I could cuddle with in my bed, and the type of dog that would be really sweet and affectionate, and more than anything, hopefully mellow, because I can't stand super hyper dogs, and the type of dog that wouldn't need to have like a ton of physical activity all the time to be happy. And doing my research, I kind of came across this breed called the King Charles Cavalier Spaniel. And they're basically like a smaller Cocker Spaniel, and I think they were actually mixed with pugs at one point, and I guess they actually have been with a lot of kings and queens in Europe, and that's why it's called the King Charles Cavalier Spaniel, and they're also insanely cute. But I realized that they're pretty expensive, and to get an actual purebred puppy would be somewhere in the $2,000 range. And but things were going well between us, and I figured it would probably be worth it if it was the type of dog that would fit in well with my lifestyle. And so I did end up getting a puppy, and I named him Gizmo, and he ended up being one of the sweetest, awesomest dogs ever, and he's definitely lived up to his breed. He's very mellow, he's totally chill, but he's also really sweet and affectionate, and not the smartest tool in the shed, but he makes up for it with his sweetness. But he's not like an idiot or anything. It's just I've met a few smarter dogs, I guess I would say. But Gizmo was great, and Veronica totally fell in love with him, and we called us his mom and dad. And the thing that was very odd was when we broke up, Veronica, for some reason, decided to erase every picture of me on her Facebook page. but not the pictures of Gizmo. So there's like all these pictures of my dog on her Facebook page as if it's her dog, but yet no mention or, idea that I was born her daughter the dog or I was her boyfriend for the last 6 years. Very odd. Very weird. Don't really know what to make of that exactly, but there you go. Kind of a weird one. But yeah, that was an intense 6 years, and I definitely miss her, and I wish the best for her, and I hope she obviously comes to terms with whatever issues she's dealing with mentally, emotionally, and I hope that she is happy for sure, because I loved her a lot, and yeah. Not really a lot more to say about that. But I had another big relationship since then, and that was with another younger lady named Madison Hewitt, who I met about 5 or 6 years ago from now, I think, something like that. And I met her pretty quickly. Oh wait, no, I met her before me and Veronica broke up actually. I kind of forgot about the timeline there. She actually worked for me as a caregiver for, I would say, the last year or so in my relationship with Veronica. And I met her just for the Craigslist ad, which is how I meet a lot of caregivers these days. And she was, I think, about 21 or 2 when I met her, and she had been going to UCSC, but then she dropped out, and I think when I met her, she was working mainly at a laundromat here in town, and when she came in for the interview, we ended up just like twitting really quickly and talked for a good half hour, 40 minutes the first time we met. And that literally happens when I meet someone that's interviewing for the caregiver job. It's usually just like kind of a 5-10 minute, hi, how you doing? I'm me, I'm you, and kind of like just get a vibe of the person. But Madison I liked immediately, and I could tell she was really smart and really interested and just had a really cool personality. And so yeah, so she worked for me for a while, and then after Veronica and I broke up, a little while later, me and her kind of started having feelings for each other, and it started out, man, it's quite a saga. My relationship with her has been very up and down and very soap opera and very intense, but that's partly why I'm going to go into it, because it's pretty fascinating and has a lot of interesting twists and turns. It started out in a manner that I'm actually rather embarrassed about and feel kind of shitty about, and that is because after I had been broken up with Veronica, I was kind of fucked up in the head, pretty emotionally upset, pretty lonely, pretty horny, all of that kind of shit. And so initially, me and Madison kind of worked out this thing of I would give her some of my drugs, which I use in liquid form of OxyContin, which, as a side note, is kind of interesting because it's the only medication that I take, and most people that are as severely disabled as I am tend to take a lot of medications. for all sorts of things, but for some reason, Oxy actually works for me very well. It takes care of all of the physical pain that I have from my scoliosis, which is rather big. It basically pushes on my scoliosis is just a bend of the spinal cord, and so it pushes on my intestines and a lot of my organs. So, like, every time I have gas or something is moving through my intestines, it hurts a lot. And it also, so it took care of that pain, and it also takes care of any pain I have from just like lying in bed all the time and not moving a lot. When I was up in my wheelchair a lot, that would hurt and get painful after a while. I haven't been able to get up in my chair for a while now because well, it's a combination of things. Mainly, I started to outgrow my seat, and so I had to get a new one built, and that was in the process of being done right when the COVID thing hit. And so now I'm kind of decided I don't want to get in my chair and go out in public till that goes away anyway, because I really don't want to get that for obvious reasons. I've had enough pulmonary breathing issues throughout my life, so that's the last thing I need. But I also just haven't had many people working for me that can lift me into my chair. But I'm gonna figure out a way to fix it soon because I definitely want to get more active again and get out in the world. I've kind of been thinking that maybe I'll figure out something kind of different than the wheelchair because honestly, as cool as the electric wheelchair is, I was never really all that comfortable in it, and I could never talk very well or loud enough to be heard, like in loud public places. And so I've been thinking lately that maybe I'll figure out something that's like maybe like a bed that's like smaller that I can kind of get pushed around in or something. Or I don't know, maybe I'll come up with something crazy. Like, oh, I don't know.
I'll come down there in my wheelbarrow. I got a couple of naked boys that wheel me bare everywhere I want to go. And get that pizza, shove that thing down my throat, and give you my American Express card, and you can just write yourself the ticket to Hollywood.
Something along those lines, anyway. But as you can tell, I try to change subjects and kind of quickly avoiding the subject of me giving Madison drugs for sexual favors, basically, which is kind of how things started. I will say, in my defense, that I really had the impression from her that she was pretty on top of like using drugs and was, not much of an addict, and I quickly found out that wasn't the case because I noticed her very quickly once that started stealing more of my drugs from me that I didn't offer to give her and things like that. And then I found out from her that she actually had a pretty big history with her drugs. In fact, one of her earlier boyfriends turned her on to heroin and actually used to shoot up with her, and it was pretty bad. And her history with drugs overall is actually kind of interesting because when she was in high school, she was actually very straight edge and didn't do any drugs and was part of the whole Seedster straight edge crowd and really prided herself on that and was a straight A student and yeah, didn't do anything at all really but then when she was a senior in high school, I believe, she ended up getting a counselor or a therapist to give her Adderall. And she got very into that, liked it a lot. I mean, she admits herself that she didn't really need it at all as far as like helping her emotionally or anything. It was just that she liked it. So, yeah, she went from being very straight edge to then I guess, like a lot of people do when they're at one extreme, they end up going to the other extreme very quickly. And that's what she did once she got to college. Once she got to college, she started drinking very heavily and doing heroin and taking pills and pretty much like whatever she could get her hands on was what she would do. So when I found all of this out, I obviously felt really bad and really stupid that I had even considered thinking that that could be a good idea, and I immediately told her that I wasn't going to do that ever again, and I made a point to make sure that she knew if she stole drugs from me, that she would not be able to keep working for me as a caregiver, and so after that, things actually got a lot better. She seemed to be doing okay with the fact that she couldn't take my drugs anymore, and beyond that, we just like really liked each other a lot and cared about each other a lot, and it just sort of organically developed into a good healthy-ish relationship. And on top of that, she was an awesome caregiver and really attentive and really good at learning like how to deal with stuff medically that I needed done. And we also just had very similar tastes when it came to movies and TV. Not so much music, although some music we liked a lot. She is really into hip hop more than anything else, and she was especially into Odd Future and Tyler. And I was just kind of giving into him and them, and she kind of made me realize how great they were and he was. And so that was cool, and she also turned me on to a lot of like folk punk stuff. And she was also really into like My Chemical Romance, which made sense given her age and the whole scene sort of thing. So I was kind of just giving into their Black Parade album, which is a pretty amazing album. I always kind of dismissed them as just one of the labor post-alternative bands, but they're actually pretty awesome, especially in my opinion their last couple albums. And it's cool too that Gerard Way likes comic books. He's the guy that created the Umbrella Academy comic, and now it's a really good show on Netflix as well. But anyway, back to me and Madison, our relationship was getting better. She seemed to be doing better drug-wise, even though I knew she was still like partying and drinking a fair amount when she wasn't at work, and I definitely kind of worried about that and wondered, how much of a handle she really had on things. But our relationship was getting better. Our sex life actually ended up being kind of awesome in sort of a very different way than my relationship with Veronica was. It was kind of funny because Veronica and I had all of the like touchy-feely, I love you so much, we're gonna be together forever, and tissy kind of, end of things down good. But then the sex was really messed up and weird because she did never like get into it or enjoy it, it seemed like. I don't know if she was enjoying it with the guy she was seeing behind my back, but that's another story. But with me and Madison, it was really good right off the bat. It was obvious that she really enjoyed sex and that she enjoyed it with me. I was able to give her 10 or so orgasms every time we hooked up, so that was pretty awesome and gave me a lot of confidence and made me feel like I was capable of being a good lover, which I always like kind of figured and knew that I mean, I've always throughout my life kind of had the attitude that I can pretty much do anything if it's something I want to do badly enough, and I kind of figured that would be the same as anything else, but you know, it's obviously a lot different to think that you can do something as opposed to finding out that you actually can, so that was cool. And it was nice to know that she was enjoying it as much as I was, and it wasn't just like a caregiver like doing something for me, which certain ones had. I'd have like some. I also don't want to make it sound like Veronica and Madison and the Escorts I used to see one of the only women I've ever hooked up with, because that isn't the case. I actually had a few kind of short-lived affairs, I guess you would say, with a few different girls in between there throughout my life, but sex-wise, yeah, it was the best that had ever been with Madison. And we were getting closer, and I would say falling in love a bit. And then she decided to do something kind of interesting, which at the time I tried to have an open mind about because partly because I just got out of such a big, heavy, oh, we're gonna be together forever type relationship with Veronica, and then I was kind of open to trying something different, and I was already kind of an open-minded, hippie type guy. But yeah, basically, she had told me that she was hanging out with this guy named Matt Baker, who apparently she had gone to high school with. I think he might have been like a year ahead of her or something like that, and they had been friends, and she was hanging out with him from time to time. I guess he had moved to Santa Cruz from San Diego recently, and she made it sound like she really wasn't into him that much, and I thought he was just kind of a nerd, and like kept telling me I had nothing to worry about, and it was partly because we were getting really close, and it really felt to me like our relationship was starting to get to the point where it might actually have some legs, and like maybe we'd be together a while and it could be a good serious thing. So she was saying that like she kind of liked him and like he liked her more, was the way she made it sound. It was like she knew he liked her, wanted to hook up with her, and she kept putting it off. And then I think it was maybe like 2017 Christmas, somewhere around there. She said that she was gonna be going home to her mom's house in San Diego, and that she might be hanging out with Matt down there because his parents were down there too, and that she might have sex with him. And I was like, okay, whatever, like, I don't really care that much, especially if you're not that into him and you feel like you just want to throw him a fuck, basically. And then when they got back, basically Madison said that they had hooked up and I then found out that they had dropped acid together and had ended up like having sex the entire time, pretty much, like 8 hours. And it, like, she seemed suddenly very into him and like super just like it became really serious very quick, and it almost to me had this weird ring of like, what the hell, we like gave her a bunch of acid and like I don't know. It just had this all like, I don't want to say Charles Manson, but like that's what you think of when you think of dudes giving girls acid and like suddenly they're all like obsessed with the guy, you know? And so that was just kind of weird. And not long after that, she decided to let him move in with her. And that seemed really odd, considering that she was very hesitant to kind of get really serious with me quickly. And as soon as that happened, there was a mutual friend of ours that me and Madison had that was actually a housemate of hers as well. And he was actually a caregiver of mine as well. And he did not like that at all. And I tried to like talk to him about why that was, and he just said to me, you know, I don't know, man. And you gotta know too, this guy was like very mellow, very nice, and tended to be pretty open-minded and seemed like he liked most people. So for him to say that definitely got my attention, and he was just kind of saying like, I don't really know, I can't really put my finger on it, but the guy just really loves me the wrong way, and there's something really creepy and weird about him. And I was like, okay, that's interesting to know. So I decided to talk to Matt and have him come over so I could meet him and see what he was like. And we were kind of just talking about Madison, and we both had concerns about her doing drugs. At least that's what he told me, and I appreciated that. And he also was a smart guy. He was interested in science fiction and fantasy. The main thing he did, and the main thing he was interested in, was this internet video game called Overwatch, I think. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's the one it was. And he was like very, very into that, to the point where I was like, how did anybody at the age of 24 or 25 be that into a video game? But like, whatever, dude, that's the thing, whatever. And he would even talk about how like he was so good at it that he might like get a professional career off the game somehow or something. And that always seemed very odd to me and kind of silly, but whatever, you know. A dream's a dream. I'm not gonna judge, I guess, even though I was judging a bit. But he was into psychedelics as well, and I liked him at first, but I do have to admit there was something about him that kind of rubbed me the wrong way as well. And I wasn't sure what it was. At first I thought maybe it was just as I was jealous, you know, because of Madison being with him and all that. But I didn't get upset about the idea of Madison dating both of us at first, because she said that's what she wanted to do, and as long as it was like in the open and we all knew what was going on, I figured that, hey, maybe this could even be a good thing. Maybe like Matt is a good guy and he will like want to support our relationship, like the one she had with me, and it could be like a whatever, kind of a freeway thing where everybody is positive and open and honest and helping each other out. Problem is, it did not end up going that way at all. It turned out about a year-ish later that I noticed that Madison was just, it just seemed like she was doing too good. And I hate to say that, but when you know the way addicts are, especially when it's like something as heavy as opiates or heroin that you have a problem with, and that was definitely the main thing. Also, like, benzos were an issue, and there were a couple incidents where she would take benzos and get drunk, and not here, like when she was working for me, but like back home when she wasn't, and I think she almost lit her apartment on fire once when that happened, and got all of her housemates super pissed at her, understandably, and that was kind of amusing, but basically she told me that she was going to meetings like a couple times a week. And to me, that was, in my mind, the only way that she would really have any chance of not using, because when it's a drug that heavy, you can't just like typically go cold turkey, and especially if you're not like dealing with the emotional reasons that make you do drugs to begin with, or drink, or whatever your drug of choice is. And Madison's case, it had a lot to do with, I think, with the fact that her dad died when she was like 1 year old, something like that, when she was an infant, died of cancer. That was really sad, obviously. So she never really had a dad figure in her life, and her mom single parented her. But her mom had a lot of issues with alcohol and pills herself, and I think that made it really difficult for her to be a good mom. And I think a lot of the time Madison was growing up, her mom loved her and did the best she could, obviously. I mean, I could tell that. I've talked to her mom a fair amount, and I know her mom cares about her a lot, but, she did the best she could, but I think a lot of the time they were kind of more like friends more than a parent-child relationship, because her mom, like, obviously never could grow up entirely if she was using, and she was dealing with her husband's death, and they had to like live in the same room a lot, even when Madison was like still 10 to 13, I believe, something like that. I think she got over him around high school, but it was just intense, and I don't think she really dealt with a lot of the things she had to go through as a kid, and the trauma she went through when she was really young, when her dad died, and, if you don't ever face that stuff, it's obviously gonna come out in other weird ways, and so all of that was a factor on why I figured she would need to at least be in a program of some kind, or go to rehab, or do something that would push her into talking about those issues if she was ever going to have any long-term chance of really staying clean. So, plus I knew she was still drinking and doing other drugs, and so it was an interesting period, because she was telling me that she was going to these meetings, and in fact, Matt was supposedly driving her to these meetings every time, and me and Matt were hanging out because he was actually working for me a little bit at the time, very part-time, but a little bit. again, I just figured, like, if she's dating both of us and we're all hanging out, then why not? Why not try to make the best of it? So you would talk about both his concern with her going back to guns and that he was taking her to meetings and being on top of her, quote unquote, and making sure she was staying clean. But it was weird because he was definitely, in some ways, I could tell, being supportive and a somewhat good influence because she did, over that period, stop using benzos and stop drinking. And that impressed me, and I first thought, well, maybe he is encouraging her to do better, and maybe she is, like, getting what she needs from, going to meetings and all that. And, but at the same time, Matt would say some odd things. He would say, like, he would talk for a while about how he was glad that she was doing better and that, like, going to meetings and all that. But then he would say something along the lines of, I think Madison is just one of those girls that has to do drugs. Like, as if there's no hope for her and that, like, she's gonna do drugs no matter what. And that struck me as really odd because, like, I don't care what you say. If I love someone, I'm gonna hope that they can do way better and that they have the potential to get clean. And if it comes down to it, I will say, like, maybe I can't date you any longer unless you actually get clean and deal with your shit. So that was an odd period, and it went on for a while. And during this time, I felt like my relationship with Madison outside of that and all that was actually really good. And that's the thing I haven't talked about much yet, which I do want to say. And that's why I ended up staying with her for quite a while, is that there's actually a lot of good in our relationship as well. When Madison is here with me, away from that, and just like either working or just hanging out with me, she's awesome. And we get along really well. We hardly ever fought during this period. And we just, as far as like the domestic bliss type end of things, it was amazing. Like, we just really had fun together, and I always looked forward to her coming in and hanging out with me and watching movies and TV with her and discussing everything and fooling around, and like everything was good on that end. But I noticed that whenever she would leave, she would get really weird. Like, I would text her and not hear back from her for long periods of time, and I would, like, just, I don't know, it just felt like when she was here, she was really close and, like, affectionate, but then it felt like there was something else going on that I wasn't, like, catching. And that kept kind of increasing over the next couple of years. And I believe it was 2018, Madison, on Halloween, actually, yeah, Halloween 2 years ago, 2018, Madison ended up getting hospitalized for a blood infection. And she made it sound, to me, like it was just this weird, random thing. She had no idea how she got it, yada, yada, yada. Turned out it was from shooting up. Turned out that Matt had been lying to me the entire fucking time about what she was doing and taking her to meetings. He was not doing any of that, and he was encouraging her to lie to me about the whole thing and was trying to tell her that her relationship with me was unhealthy because I was older than her, and that his was the good one. And yeah, obviously, right? Really healthy. And the other thing was that Matt already, for like a year, I had decided was a complete dick anyway, and I fired him working here. Get this. I think it was the second day he came to work for me. It's the middle of the afternoon. I think my mom was maybe out in the backyard gardening, something like that. All of the blinds were open. I'm just sitting here watching TV, and I look to my left where Matt's sitting, and he's fucking jerking off. Just sitting right next to me, jerking off. And I just look at him, and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? And he was just like, oh, I don't know. And like, you like barely even said anything or had a reasonable, like, excuse. You just kind of stopped doing it. And it really struck me then that it was like him sort of acting like a dog, like, check out my dick, like, I'm fucking your girlfriend, and here's my dick, and I'm the alpha male around here, and you better fucking deal with it. So that was fucking bizarre as hell. And when I told Madison about it, I should have known that her relationship with him and her attraction for him was pretty weird and dysfunctional because she barely even, like, reacted. Like, yeah, she thought it was weird, and she was surprised that he had done it, but it didn't upset her, like, that much at all, and it didn't make her want to stop dating him, or made her like, wow, that's really fucked up that he would do that to you. Like, any of that type of reaction was barely there. Also, the entire time that Matt worked for me, he would talk all the time about how he was so good in bed and how every girl that he was with loved him because he would basically be so dominant and aggressive. And I quote, every girl basically just wants to be raped, unquote. Yeah, he said that to me quite a few times. And yeah, he was like sort of exaggerated, but not really. He was basically implying that, like, deep down, every woman girl wants to be dominated, and you need to be totally aggressive and borderline physically rapey if the girl is going to be turned on and like you at all. And I was just like, okay, yeah, dude, like, maybe that's true for some women, and maybe even, like, if you were being generous, half the women out there, but that's not what every woman wants, and that's a really creepy way to say it. And he would also talk a lot about how Madison was just a dumb girl that didn't know what she wanted, and that it was all about manipulating her and basically not giving her much affection and manipulating her emotions, and then being really nice to her after being shitty to her for a while, like basically the asshole routine. And even talked about, like, when she was quote unquote bad, how he would quote unquote punish her, and it was just like fucking gross, really gross all around. And I just didn't understand what Madison saw in him, and as more and more time went by, I could tell it was a dysfunctional, like, I never had a daddy issue kind of thing, and those are the women that have those issues the most tend to fall for assholes the most, and get into the whole abuse, and then, like, didn't want to, being verbally abused, and then they're nice like 10% of the time, and getting into that whole routine, and it became really clear to me that that's what was going on with her and that, and I fired him after I saw enough of that. I just couldn't be around the guy anymore, and again, like, beyond that, the guy is just not attractive at all. Like, I'm not just saying this about the way he looks. Like, yeah, he's okay looking, I guess, but, he's balding at 25. He's got this giant beard that he barely trimmed or even washed. Like, he literally had shit in his beard at work. He would always come to work with mismatching shoes. His pants would always be unzipped and halfway down so his pubic hair was sticking out. And everybody that met him when he worked here was just like, what the fuck, that guy is so gross and so sleazy and so weird. Like, what the fuck does Madison see in him? Why is she dating him and you? Why isn't she just dating you is what, all of my friends would ask me. And I got to the point with the whole, like, knowing what a dick he was, knowing that he had been lying to me the entire time about helping her get clean and that she was using heroin and meth, apparently, behind my back, and he obviously just felt like, well, as long as she's fucking me, I don't care if she does drugs. Because, he could have broken up with her or told her that he wasn't going to date her if she kept doing stuff like that. But he did the exact opposite. He actually encouraged her to do this shit. So I wanted to get all that out there, partly just because I want people to know what a gross asshole he is. And I want all the women out there that maybe think he might be a good guy to know that he isn't. But, if you're self-destructive and you want to do hard drugs, then maybe he's the perfect guy for you, actually. But yeah, fuck you, Matt Baker. Fuck you up and down the street, because I was really a good guy about you, and I was really open-minded, and I gave you a chance to step up and be a good guy and make me think that maybe three-way relationships could be a cool thing, and I'm sure they still can with certain people, but man, this was just a big clusterfuck all around, and I kind of had a big implosion with Madison at that point. Told her she couldn't work for me anymore, and that she was going to have to go to rehab if she wanted me to let her keep working here, let me be in her life, and we stopped talking for a few months, and then she actually did kind of do one step that was good and healthy. She stopped chewing up and started taking Suboxone, which is a prescribed drug that doctors can prescribe for heroin addicts that are trying to get off it. And she never went to rehab, however, and she never started going to meetings again. And I kind of predicted that what would end up happening would be that she would just be addicted to Suboxone, basically, from here on out. And that's kind of what ended up happening, but I can tell you from personal experience, compared to shooting up, it's way better. And she actually did seem to get a little happier and more motivated to start doing art. And she just got into painting and drawing a bunch over the last 6 months or so that I've been hanging out with her. I did start hanging out with her again, as it sounds, probably. I decided that if she could, you know, keep doing some own, and as long as she wasn't shooting up, as long as she was healthy and happy and could have a good relationship with me when she's here, I would consider it. But I also told her that it wasn't gonna be something I would want to do for very much longer if she didn't, at the very least, completely remove Matt from her life and move out of the house that she was living in with him. She went from living with him and that other mutual friend that I mentioned to another house where it was just the two of them. And I told her that I would give her a few months to do it, but that we would have to end things, and if she didn't think that was a good idea, or not, you know. And she said to me that she loved me, that she knew our relationship was way better than her relationship with Matt, that she knew that her relationship was really fucked up and based on dysfunctional, like, childhood daddy issues, and that he's really bad for her, and that he encourages her to be self-destructive and all of that, and that she really wanted to give our relationship a real chance to see that if she wasn't with him, if it would, you know, get better and deeper. And so that's what she told me up until the point that she was supposed to move, which was about a month ago, 2 months ago. And right when she was supposed to move, she ended up completely chickening out, basically, and wrote me this, like, giant novel-sized text. Couldn't even tell me in person on the day that she was supposed to move out of our house into a house near mine. So that was great and really sad, and was, like, really disappointed because I have really fallen in love with this girl, and the times that have been good have been really good, and I really thought that there was a big potential for us to, you know, make a good relationship together if she could cut out that and be in a positive environment where she's not as tempted to use, and, you know, that we would work the other things out. But if she couldn't do that, I was over it. So we were kind of debating breaking up, and what she basically told me was that she felt like, as much as she loved me and as much as she knew that things could be really good between us, that she felt like she needed some time to herself to, like, kind of decide what she wanted to do more before putting all her eggs in one basket, so to speak, and moving in next door to me and committing to me and all that. So she suggested that we take a couple months to have her kind of not work for me as much, because she worked for me before, like, a lot, like, almost. It was around 65 hours a week. It was a ton. So she basically lived with me already, which kind of makes you wonder, like, what's the big deal moving in the rest of the way. But anyway, we decided for the next couple months we would back off on the relationship, not hook up as much, if at all, and that she told me Matt was also leaving town for this other job for the next few months, and that he would be in town on the weekends, but that's it. Of course, I have no idea if that's actually true, and given the amount of times that she's lied to me about, like, what's going on with them and what he says and what she says about them and me, it's hard to really believe that that's what's happening. But if it is, that's good, and she's gonna take these 2 months to decide what she wants. So come the beginning of November, I'm either gonna give it a go with her and have her come back and live basically with me and work for me all the time again, or we're gonna completely cut things off. And I totally get why a lot of my friends have been like, why didn't you do that a long time ago? But I can tell you that the good overshadowed the bad for me a lot of the time. And I just thought things could get better, and I still think they can. I think that the main issue at hand here is, I mean, yeah, I hope she is taking some self-care time and, like, actually figuring out what she wants, but I think it has more to do with the fact that she's just kind of addicted to being with asshole losers that encourage her bad behavior, and the fact that I treat her as well as I do, and that's one thing that I and all of my friends like agree on, is that I treat this girl amazingly well. I'm always sweet to her, I'm always encouraging her to be better, whether it's about drugs or art or whatever it is she wants to pursue in her life. I'm always buying her food, I'm always taking care of her, and I think that's part of the problem for her, is that she's so not used to having a guy in her life that actually does that for her, that it's hard for her to, like, not take it for granted and push him away. And I just can't keep letting her do that to me any longer. It's too painful. It's too hard to keep thinking that, like, she's about to make a big change for herself, and partially for me, and then just have her not do it and flake out at the last minute. She definitely has a habit of doing that, and, like, she started dating Matt kind of late when our relationship was starting to get serious, and, you know, stuff like that. So it's really easy for her to sabotage things right when they have the potential to get better. And she needs to step up and prove to me that I'm worth her time this time, because I am, and I'm fucking awesome, and I'm a sexy motherfucker, unlike that, and she fucking is lucky to have me. I could say that without a doubt. And I feel like, you know, when it really comes down to it, if I was gonna just talk straight to her through the podcast, I guess, the thing I would want to say more than anything else is that oh man, that was so easy and I couldn't help myself, but all joking aside, seriously, if I was gonna say one thing to her, it would definitely be,
if you wanna be my lover, you gotta get with my friends.
I'm kidding. I couldn't help myself again. But seriously, no, it's that I deeply love you very much, Madison, and I feel like if you're gonna, if you have a big plan at the end of these 2 months to move to another place like back home and you're gonna, go to rehab or you have a whole plan about getting into the program, that's one thing. But if you're gonna stay in sanitaries and you're not gonna jump on that, I think it would be a mistake to not at least give Vince a chance with us, because I can pretty much say without a doubt that while Matt was a fucking terrible influence and played on the daddy stuff inside you, I would say if there was ever a good father type figure in your life, it's probably me. And, yeah, it's kind of weird that you're dating that guy, I guess, to a degree, but ultimately, people always end up dating people that represent, their moms or their dads to some degree. Maybe in this case, it's just more obviously healthy. And I do think that if we get that out of the picture and you're focused on us, that things will get better because you're not going to be distracted and you'll be able to work on things with me and with yourself. So I hope that's what you decide to do, because it would be a big bummer to end things right when they have a chance to get better, especially considering all the chances I've given you to at least give it a try. So I guess we'll see. In the meantime, since I'm gonna have some time where you're not my girlfriend, all work and no play meant just an adult boy, right? So, something I did about 15, 20 years ago, I can't remember exactly when this was. I know the internet was kind of just getting going, so it was probably around the turn of the century. I had this idea as kind of a social experiment, activism idea to bring attention to disabled people and sexuality and that kind of thing. I decided to auction, have sex with a disabled guy on eBay, and I didn't think it would probably stay up, and it didn't for very long. eBay of course took it down very quickly, but it was funny and a lot of people noticed it. And in fact, I actually got a radio station from, I think it was the East Coast, noticed it and thought it was really funny, and they ended up interviewing me on the air for a good 20 minutes, and they just asked me why I did it, and they asked me about myself, and asked me if I was gonna be with what actresses I thought were hottest that I would want to hook up with if I could or whatever. And I can't remember all the people I said back then, but I was thinking that I should do something along those lines now that might be kind of interesting. And I'm always up for the idea of drawing attention to disabled people's sexuality, and I'm not afraid to put myself out there. So I was thinking what I could do is I could do a Tinder ad, and I've actually thought about doing that before just to kind of see what happens. And I may end up doing that, but if I do, I'll let you guys know how it went, because I'm sure we'll get some interesting responses, if any. But I thought for now I would just put it out there on the internet that I'm gonna be single for a little while here. So if any girls want to date a disabled guy, especially if you're not looking for anything serious, and you live in California or in the Bay Area, I'm here in Santa Cruz, and I can't really offer anybody a plane ticket, so it'd probably be better if you were from around here, but I can offer a place to stay for a day or two, and if I'm open to anybody above 18 from any walk of life, and especially if you like the idea of, hanging out with a disabled guy who has a podcast show and wants to talk about his life. And I can talk about our experiences. And another thing I was thinking was I should mention the actresses that I think are hot nowadays. And there's this, first I'll talk about movies and TV. And movies, this woman named Lily Simmons, I don't know if it's Lily or Lily, but she was in the first season of True Detective, and she was in a really named Western horror movie called Bone Tomahawk, and then she, the biggest part was probably on the Cinemax show called Banshee. That is really, really entertaining show. It's kind of like a soap opera action kind of show. It's about this small town with like crooked cops and Amish people and gangsters, and she plays the kind of bad guy's daughter, and she's super hot in it, and she's just amazingly hot, and I don't know, she's blonde, and I don't usually even like blonde girls, so it kind of says a lot. And then on TV, the girl I think is probably the hottest is Chloe Bennett from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The lady that plays Twait, oh my god, is she a babe? And besides her, there's like Tristan Serranos on The Walking Dead, Isaac Gonzalez and Madison Davenport that were both in From Dusk Till Dawn, the series. I'm a big fan for all of them. So, if they end up listening and they want to date me, I'm open to the idea, I guess. We'll see. But the other thought I had was that it could be interesting to do kind of a project along the lines of like intentionally, putting out me with maybe some models or adult film stars, because not only to we like maybe film something together and put that out, but I could, talk about them and give them some publicity, and they could give me some publicity too, and it could be an interesting project. So my favorite porn actresses are Sasha Grey, even though I think she's retired these days. She always seemed really smart and into a lot of other, like, she acts and she does music, and so I always thought that we would be an interesting team because she seemed really open-minded, and I always thought she was one of the sexiest porn stars by far. And then as far as actresses that are still working, there's this girl Lemmy LaCroix, who is really petite, hot. She has probably the best butt of any white girl I have ever seen, and she kind of fits the same thing. So there you go. And I think she was from San Jose. I'm not sure if she's still acting, but if she is, I'd love to do something with her. Riley Reid, Dylan Harper, And then there's this Russian girl named Foxy D, who's just beautiful in my opinion. I don't know if she's in America now, but that would be interesting. Uh, so yeah, I'm just putting that out there. And if you're just a regular girl that wants to hang out with me just because you think it would be interesting, shoot me an email. Oh my God, he's very excited about the idea apparently. Thank you, Jezebel. I'm glad you liked it. Yeah. Anyway, shoot me an email. The subject should say a date with Jesse Ray, just so I know what to look for. And you can also hit me up on Twitter or Instagram. And I'm also going to put up a bunch of pictures of myself and a couple videos of me kind of talking about the podcast as well as this idea, so you can look at those and follow me on there. And yeah, we'll see what happens. This podcast episode turned out to be a lot longer than I expected, but hey, it's a pretty interesting subject, and I've had a lot of experience for a severely disabled guy, so that's what makes it all the more interesting and important, I would say. So I'm gonna wrap it up here, and who knows, maybe me going on a bunch of dates will make Madison get her head together. You never know. Anyway, thanks for listening as always. Subscribe, leave comments. Next episode, I'm going to be talking all about the movies and TV shows of the last 10 years that are really worth checking out. Have a good night. Take care, whatever time of day it is. Take care, everyone.